Alright, hello guys, welcome to my channel, Mr. Ade Ayobet Predict. As we all know that corner prediction happens to be one of the hardest market in betting stores that we all know, because corner can be influenced by various factors based on situations of games, sometimes the minutes and how teams really need the goals. So despite the fact that most times we only try to consider some statistic factors before we can predict our corner market. Uh, that alone is not really enough, but at least to some extent, I believe it can actually give us assurance of our game's possible outcomes. So, the method of corner prediction that I'm going to teach you guys in this video may not be, the market provision for it may not be always common for all other bet platforms, but at least you guys will surely see markets that you can go for some particular bet platform like 1xbet. So this particular game happens to be one of the games that I use to test the strategy of this particular latest corner. So I want you guys to pay a very good close attention to how to make use of this particular betting strategy. Actually, initially I didn't want to show you guys this particular strategy because if it is too casted, surely you guys may not be able to see markets to go for. So if you look at this particular game ended up as under 2.5 corner, which is not really common in football games, because we all know that in football games, corner, there are some games that you can be expecting the least corner that you should be expecting in the game should be around maybe 4, 5 or 3. So in this kind of situation where we only add just 2 corner in this particular game, which is not which seems to be weird. And let us just look at the start and let's look at the last previous games to see what could have happened, because there are some things that I always do when it comes to corner predictions, and I always try to play safe. So now if you try to look at the last games of the home team, the away team, and they are head to head, because these are the things that I always try to look into, and these are the only information that you can try to access to understand how the how these teams that are involved have been playing for their past previous games. So now if you what I do is that I only check their last 2 games, and in the previous corner prediction videos that I made use of average points, that is in the last 5 games, the average corner that they had in the last 5 games. But this time around, I will only look into last 2 games for the home team, away team, and also in their head to head. So now in the last 2 games that they played, there's one particular match for the home team. Okay, no, their home team last 2 previous games before this particular match. We won't look at this. We are only looking at their league games. So we have to look at last 2 games, and we have to check the total corner that they had in that particular game. So if you look at it very well, you guys will see that in this particular game they only had 6 corner in total, 4 corner for the home team and 2 corner for the away team. And if you add it up to the next corner that they had there, you guys can see that they just had the home team had 6 here, they had a 2 here. So adding 8 plus 6 making it 14 for you guys. And moving on to the away team, checking their last 2 games against each other under the same league, and for the away team in the last game before that particular match, they had a 10 corner in this particular game, and adding 10 to 14 that we had for the home team, and that should give us 24. And now moving on to the second game for the away team, and looking at the corner there, we can see that they also had a 10 corner, so making it 34 corner in total for us. So you guys will notice that the away team seems to be having more corner in their last previous games compared to that of the home team. And then moving on to the last previous games against each other, we already have 34 total corner played in the last 2 games for both home and away. And looking at their head to head, you can see that the game that they played before this current game, they only had 4 corner, which shows that in this particular game you should be expecting something very small when it comes to corner in it. So these are the things that you guys need to be considering. Like, you have to look into it, how these teams have been playing corners. It seems that they don't really put pressures from the flank when it comes to playing against each other. So now trying to add 34 with 4, we are getting 38. And moving on to the last previous games before that, this current one that we check, where the match ended up as 2-2. If we look at it, we have they played so many corners here. So now trying to add 14 with 38. So now trying to add 14 with 38, surely we are getting 52. Now let us move on to our calculator. So when it comes to using logic and calculation for evaluating the fact from the start, some people always be like, this thing may not really work out every time. Yes, it cannot work out every time because we cannot always have 100% total control on human activities. But what I do is just that I consider some steps before concluding on things. So we have 52 as the total corner they had in their last two games for the home team, away team, and in their head to head. So we're having 52 corner. Now I'm going to divide it by 6, and why am I dividing it by 6 is because we look from where we got this particular 52 total corner. We got it from last two games for the home team, last two games for the away team, making it 4 games, and last two games against each other, making it 6 games. And that is where I got this particular 6 that you guys have seen that I'm using to divide this particular 52. And what we are seeing here happens to be the average corner of 8.6. And one thing about me is just that I always try to divide their average corner into two, because the average corner that you are getting from their last previous games against, like the last two games for the home team, last two games for the away team, and the last two games against each other, the average corner that you are getting from it does not mean that that will be the total corner that they are going to play. That does not mean that will be the outcome. So it will just only give you the range and the insight of the possible outcomes of the games, and that is the purpose of average total points or anything that you evaluate your games on. So it just only give you the insights of, okay, this should be the range of what you should be expecting. So if I want to just go for the prediction, normal this particular game is supposed to end up as probably maybe over 3.5 corners or over 4.5 corners, because I always try to divide it by 2. And from what I've noticed so far, if you are dividing the average corners and you are getting something like this, it shows that that kind of games are games that you need to run away from. Like, you need to go away from that kind of games, because I'm going to show you another game that I tried it on, but actually that one has slightly won. But there are games that you should not really you know put your corner predictions on. But if you are able to get something like maybe 5.5 average corner after dividing the average corner by 2, and you are getting 5.5, because these games like this you are getting 5.5, then these kind of games are games that you can go for as over 5 corner. But let's assume that after dividing all the average corners and you are getting something like maybe 15, and you try to divide the 15 by 2 and you are getting 7.5, then this kind of game are games that you can truly go for as over 7.5. So whatever you divide your stores by 2, if you divide it by 2, the average corner that you've gotten, if you divide it by 2, then you can go for it. And one thing about this thing is that any games that fall below 5 after dividing it by 2, maybe you are getting, after dividing it by 2, maybe you are getting like 3, you are getting like 4, you are getting like maybe 4.5. It shows that that kind of games, they are games that you are not to be expecting more corner in that games, and you should always avoid it. So now let me put you guys through the second games that I predicted that day, and I discovered that this also fall under small games that end up in small corners. So let's check it out. So I think I played that day. I did analysis on Lazio, yes, Cagliari, and this particular game also ended up in 5 corners. But in that day, I actually predicted it over 4 corners, and they did that towards the 10 minutes. And I noticed that I told you guys that there are things that always influence corner prediction, because if you notice this particular game very well, in the first half of the game, if you look at it, they only had a 3 corner, and towards the end of the game, that's when they had the last corner. 96 minutes, that's when they had the last corner. And before that one, they had the last time they had the corner before that one, I think it should be okay, 59 minutes. So corner is not something that is very easy to predict compared to that of the predicting maybe goals, predicting handicap, predicting double chance, because those games, they are something that is based on teams team's performance and teamwork. But this time around, when it comes to corner predictions and yellow card, there are markets that can be influenced by so many factors. So now let me show you guys the stats for this one and see that games that fall under maybe 5.5 are not a good game to go for as over. So this particular game here, we are going to check the last two games from them, and looking at it, you can see that in the last games by Lazio, they had 8 corner, and the last game they had with Genoa, they had okay, they had 11 corner here. So adding 8 and 11 together, we are getting 19 corners. So we got 19 corners, total number of 19 corners from the last two games of the home team, which is Lazio. And looking into last previous games of Cagliari before that particular match, you can see that Cagliari had 9 corners here, the total number of 9 corners. They had the total number of 9 corners, and they had against Udinese, they had okay 6 corner. So adding 6 and 9 together, that is making 15, and adding 15, which happens to be the total corner the away team had in the last two games against other opponents, with the 19, which happens to be the total corner that the home team had against other opponents, is giving us the total number of 34 corners. Okay, so now moving on to the weight, their head to head, the last two games again. Let us check the last two games. This thing is very easy. The process is very easy. Just that you can only be restricted to using a particular bet platform to get the market that you want. So now, if you are looking at it in the last previous games they had against each other, you can see that they had 7 corners here, 8 corners here. Okay, so that's 15. And looking at the next one, so looking at the next one here, we have 7 corner, a total number of 7 corner. So I think probably the reason why I was able to skip through this particular game that ended up as 5 corner was because of the last previous games corner that they've been having there. So and okay, we have 4 and 3, which is 7. Okay, now let us try to add everything together, because in the last previous games against for both team, both home and away, in the last previous games against other opponents, we can see that they had 34 total number of corners, and in the last previous meeting against each other, they were able to have 22 total number of corners and making it 56 total numbers of corners. So if you are to divide it by 6, I believe you guys already know the reason why I'm dividing these particular figures by 6. That is from the last two games from the home team, the last two games from the away team, and the last two games for their head to head, and making it up to 6. So now we are getting 9.3. So if you are getting an average of 9.3 for your games, just try to note that these particular games should end up in a low, no corner games. So we have 9.3, so divide it by 2, because the 9.3 is just like giving you insight of the range and surroundings of where how the corner can end up. So I'm dividing it by 2 and I'm trying to play safe on it, so I'm getting 4.6. 4.6 is kind of even more compared to that of the other one that we did, but unfortunately this particular game ended up in a very small corner, like 5 corners that we are seeing in that particular game. Now if you want to now try to compare it to other games like this, I'm going to show you something. This let's check this. Okay, let us try and check this. If we look at this particular game ended up in a 14 corner, 11 corner for the home team and 3 corner for the away team. And actually I'm still going to do it on games that they haven't started already, but I'm just trying to put you guys through the previous game, because this particular day, the last on Monday, which happens to be the 4th of November, I actually played these games as corner that day, and I discovered this to be that okay, this is how this thing work. So let us check this and let us quickly round it up and move on to the games that they haven't played, and I'm going to leave you guys onto it to do your own analysis and engage with it on 1xbet, because you will not really get markets that will be providing you guys with corner predictions of maybe over 5.5, over you can still get over 6.5 from some bet platform, but I'm very sure games that the bookmakers know that surely you are going to get it as over 6.5 corner, like at least that game has a very high probability of coming out well, as over 6.5 corner. I'm sure the bookmakers may not really provide the market for you. So now, if you look at the match between, so this is how I want you guys to observe things. If you look at the match between Fulham and Brentford, looking into the game and the last game that the Fulham had against Everton, the corner actually ended up in 4-2, which happens to be 6 corners. And looking at the last game they had against Aston Villa, looking at it, they had 17 corners. So adding 17 corners to 6, that is 23. And for the last 2 games of the home team, we were able to get 23 total corners in the last previous games. So now, if you look at the away team, which happens to be Brentford, so looking at Brentford and check their stats, and you can see that in the last game they had 5-2 corners, which happens to be 7 corner. Okay, sorry, we are not looking at this. This is not from Premier League, so don't use our games that does not occur in the Premier League as your game. So we are starting from Ipswich, match against Ipswich. So the corner they had there happens to be 9, which is 4 and 5. 9. And looking at the next game, the match they had against Manchester United happens to be, okay, we have 11. So adding 9 with 11, that is 20. So for the home team, in their last 2 games, for the home team, Fulham, they had the total number of corner of 23. And for the away team, which happens to be Brentford, they had the total number of corner, which is 20. So joining both together, we are getting 43 from it. And looking into their head-to-head, we are going to check the last 2 games. Sorry. So go to their head-to-head, check the last 2 games. So if we are to look into the total corners that they had in the last game here, they had 7 and 6. So games that we are going to predict as over corner, they will obviously show through their stats. So we have 7 and 6, making it at 13. And looking at the other one, 13. And looking at this, we have 10. So adding 13 and 10 together, surely we are getting 23. And don't forget, from the last previous games of the home team, that is the last 2 games, and the last 2 games for the away team, we got 43 total number of corner. And in the last 8 to 8 that they had together, the last 2 games, they had a total number of corner of 23. Now adding both together, we are getting 66. You can see that it is different compared to the other stats that we just evaluated. So now let me just quickly go through the calculator and let's see. So we have 66 divided by 6. I already explained how the 6 works. So we are getting 11. So this 11 seems to be the average corner, like the range of corner that we should be expecting. And if you try to divide it by 2, surely you are getting 5.5. Trust me, if you predict this particular games as over 5.5 corners, surely you are going to win it accurately, perfectly. So sometimes if you can get 7 corners after dividing it, you are good to go. But if you are getting something like 3, or you are getting something like 4 after dividing it by 2, surely, trust me, you are not winning that particular game. And if you look at their head-to-head very well, you will notice that these teams are teams that they score corners very well. And at worst, if the game is going to cut, because I that particular day I tried to evaluate it so well, and I discovered that if a game will cut using this particular method, because looking at it, you can see that the average corner happens to be 11, and they are expected to play at least over 9, over 10, and over 11 corner based on the average stats. But you trying to divide the average by 2 is trying to play safe. And it shows that getting average corner of 11 for a game shows that that particular game is expected to end up in a very high corner match, unless there are some factors that influence the outcomes of the corner game. So no, if you are to use this particular method on games that we are currently having, games that they haven't played yet, and probably we all know that this particular game they will not really play corners very well. Let us look into games that obviously we are expecting corner from it. One of the teams that I know they play corner very well, Tottenham, they play corners very well. Okay, let's look into Brentford, Bournemouth. So after this, you guys will end up doing the rest by yourself. And okay, so we are going to use this. Okay, don't let me use Brentford. They play corners very well. Let's use Everton and West Ham. So let's use Everton and West Ham. So after this particular start, you guys can go through it, and please, in case you have any question before you know, because I noticed something, even people that are trying to learn some of my VIP betting strategy, people happens to be someone that people one thing about people is that they are not I don't know the word to use for them. When you teach them something, they are not always satisfied with it. They always end up overdoing it, because these particular VIP strategies are strategies that they can actually provide you with high accuracy of outcome. But the only problem about it is just that if you are not patient enough, and if you are not someone that is very calm, you will be frustrated to add games that should not be added. Because if you end up getting games, total that you can get in a day sometimes can be maybe 3 odd, 2 odd. And when these people want to learn, they'll be like, okay, we are satisfied with 2 odd, okay, now teach them this particular VIP strategy, and they are able to get this 2 odd. They will be feeling like, okay, they should just add more games to it, and from there they lost their game. So I want you guys to know something. If you do your analysis and your analysis does not meet the requirements, it's not a must you play bet every day. Try to avoid the games and move on with games that actually meet the analysis. At least you've tried with that. So now let's start without wasting much of our time looking at the match between the last 2 games of the home team, which happens to be West Ham. They had a match against Nottingham Forest, and looking at the total corner that they had there, they had 15 corners there. And moving on to the next game, they had with Manchester United. So they had how many corners there? Okay, they had 11 corners there. Adding 15 with 11 gives us 26. Okay, let's move on. So for the home team, we can see that in the last 2 games they had 26 total numbers of corner. And moving on to the away team, which happens to be Everton. The last match they had against Southampton, they had 9 corners in total, three for the home team and 6 for the away team, and that is 9. And checking the next game that they had against Fulham, okay, they had just 6 total numbers of corners. So adding 6 and 9 together, that is 15. So for the home team, we can see that West Ham in the last 2 games had 20 total number of 26 corners against other teams in the last 2 games. And for the away team, which happens to be Everton, in the last 2 games against other teams, they had 15 corners. So the total number of corners that these teams had against other teams happens to be 41. Alright, so now let's also move on to their last head to head against each other. So we are only going to check the last 2 games for this particular team. So you guys can see that this particular process of analysis is very, very fast, and you guys can actually enjoy it if you are calm enough to make use of it. So now in the last previous games against each other, we can see that in this particular match they had a total number of 9 corners against each other. Okay, so let's check the next one. Okay, in this particular one they had total number of 7 corner in this particular match. So what I'm concerned about is just that if you look at it in the head to head against each other, they had a total number of okay, that should be 16 corner against each other. But my own concern is just that the only side that can make this particular corner to be very low is the away team, which happens to be Everton, because I noticed that Everton style of playing games happens to be defensively, and it can reduce the total number of corners that they can get in this particular game. And teams that plays defense like Everton, it's not like they'll be playing defense to be playing their games to corner, and West Ham are not that very strong when it comes to pressuring teams like that. So it will be balanced, it will be a balanced game. So sure, we are having a 16, and don't forget the total number of corners that we have for the home team happens to be 41, and the total number of corners that we have for both home and away team against other teams happens to be 41. And in their head to head, the total number of corners that we had there happens to be 16. And adding this together, we can get 57. Now, this 57 of the thing is a concern for me, because if we try to divide it by 6, we are getting 9.5, and dividing 9.5 by 2, we are getting 4.7. It happens to be very close to it is very close to 5. But this particular game, I would just advise you guys to avoid it, because this particular game can end up in, surely it can end up in 6 corners, 7 corners, 8 corners. And but the most important thing there is just that don't go for it, because it will just shock you, just like the game I showed you guys earlier, the match against Celta Vigo and their opponents that ended up in 0-2 corners. Imagine, I've played a game like that ended up in just 1 corner. So it shows that corner can be a very dangerous market to go for, but surely you can get the market All right, because let's say for instance you are trying to play safe on your games, and after applying this particular method and you want to go for your games maybe like over 5.5, over 6.5, and surely you should be getting a very low odd of corners as low as over 5.5 at 1.07 odd, over 6 1.08 odd, over 6.5 1.16 odd, and over 7 that is and Asia over 7 corner. Because if you use this particular market and the game ended up in the exact 7 corner, they are going to refund your money. And if you, let's say you are going for over 7.5, that is 1.82 odd, you are going for over 6.5, 1.16 odd, and over 5.5, that is 1.07 odd. And to the extent, the reason why I like this particular platform is that to the extent that if you want to go for over 4, you should be able to get it like this, but the odd will be very very ridiculous. So if you apply the method and you are looking for where to use this particular market to get the market, I think this particular platform is still okay. I want to mention him again because it is not promotion. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. In case you have any questions, please drop it in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to this particular channel so that whenever I try to drop new updates on strategies and new strategies that are really working, because we know that strategies are changing, sometimes they work, sometimes they won't work. So in case we have new updates, we are going to drop it for you guys and you're going to get it. And don't forget to join our Telegram channel whereby we drop updates, our daily odds, and other tips that you guys can actually edit yourself, because we drop big games and you guys can actually edit based on your taste, based on what you want. Just that I don't like when people are editing and removing and adding something to it. You just have to remove and play your games. And also, if you want to join us on our VIP group for daily odds, you can also click on the link in the video description or in the comment section. See you guys in the next video. Bye.